So I want you to notice, first of all, this is not how to see a ghost, but how to meet a ghost. So in other words, there is a ghost and you have the ability to see a ghost. How do you then behave? Let's say there's some necessary prep work. Know someone who has died. Now, this looks facetious, but it isn't really, because in my experience, if somebody asks me to do the work of trying to find someone in the afterlife or get a message from someone and I don't know that person, it's really difficult. So the basis of developing the ability to meet a ghost, in a sense, is knowing the person who has died. So that there are people who are talented as mediums where people they've never met show up and give messages, and they may not even know who the message is for. That's not me. But anyway, for me, know someone who has died. It often helps not to be too closely related, and it certainly helps not to be too grief-stricken. I've had many people over many years consult me with wanting to get some understanding about why a parent, for example, has died and why the parent didn't come back and didn't talk to them or demonstrate that they were still alive. And often it was a grandchild who came back, a grandchild of the person who had died. And why did it skip a generation? And what I've noticed is often if you're too closely related and if you're too grief-stricken, the person is there, you just can't see them. You've created a shell around yourself that makes it too difficult. Be open, interested, and curious. That means not fearful, skeptical, or credulous. You can see some of what this is if you've ever talked to somebody or seen a video on ghost hunting. You know, you've got these people and they're simultaneously skeptical because they want proof. They're fearful, but they're excited about it because this is like walking into your own horror film, and that, you know, it could be more fun than that. And they're credulous too, because even though they're skeptical, the first moment anything happens, they're like, oh my God, this is something real. This has got, this has got to be a haunting. This is it. Of course, if they get their ghost meter out, they might find that it's not colder, which is one of the things that ghost is supposed to do, or, however they're measuring the vibrations, it may not be any different, whatever. But the point is, if you're going to explore these things, have equanimity. On the opposite side, people can be too wishful to meet a ghost, even desperate to meet a ghost because they want proof that life and love continues beyond the grave. They may be too demanding in the sense that, mom died. It's like she said she was going to come back and give me help. So where is she? And I believe that the attitude of joyful compassion, equanimity, and service, even to dead people, might help. Now, again, this is going to look a little facetious, but my experience is there's a little adjusting to this. One of the earliest experiences I had on the other side, meeting up with dead people, I was in an area where everybody goes to be oriented to being dead, and most of them don't want to admit that they're dead. And the first thing they have to understand is that they're dead so they can move beyond that place to find some other location where they'll get the help that they need for their own specific pathway through the afterlife. So there was this young woman who died, it looked like in a ski accident because she was wearing ski clothes. I guess, she must have hit her head or something. And she, started asking questions. So she was ready. So I started explaining what was going on at this level and what was going on. And this was back when I was about 30. And she said, hey, by the way, you're kind of cute. And I'm like, oh my God, a dead person's trying to pick me up. So anyway, being in this attitude of joyful, compassionate equanimity and service to dead people, especially equanimity, that's something that we need to develop. So that's what I call the necessary prep work. Oops, one more. Be awake, asleep, or in between. Well, okay, again, that looks facetious, but ghosts can appear to anyone, anywhere. Probably being in between is the most common form. You're in a half awake, half asleep state, or you're extremely tired, so that you're not necessarily, you're almost like waking, sleeping while you're awake, sleeping while you're on your feet. Some people, of course, it can happen in sleep. A lot of people don't know what to make of a visit from somebody who's passed on in their sleep because it could be, quote unquote, just a dream. But let me tell you, if you're going to pursue this path of spiritual unfolding and psychic development, dreams are the easiest and the best way to start. And keeping a dream journal, again, is the best way to do it. And let go of that question. It's just a dream. A dream is something. It's never just a dream. You know, it's a visit to the astral, or it's advice of some kind. Your body's trying to tell you it wants something from you, or it's something helping you clear an issue between you and another person. And it's the most available most people ever are when they're alive to a visit from someone who's passed on. Start with the assumption that whoever has shown up in your dream who's passed on, it was really them. And what will happen is they'll be able to come through more and more clearly. And you'll eventually realize the difference between when it's that person and when it's just an image of that person. So be awake, asleep, or in between. It's all the same. Now, Leadbeater actually wrote a chapter in a book that was published in 1903 called The Other Side of Death, carefully examined and scientifically described. He wrote a chapter called How to Meet a Ghost, and this is his advice for how to meet a ghost. It seems to me that the ghost has serious grounds for complaint with regard to the way in which the average person receives him or them. I'll say them again. It is usually a great effort for them to show themselves, and they do not undertake it unless for grave reason. Now, poor choice of words there, right? Or under stress of desperate need. And they can, under ordinary circumstances, maintain their materialization only for a few moments. The use of those few moments is all important to them. They are probably not half long enough. The moments are not probably half long enough for what they wish to say. Yet the average person wastes their invaluable time by screaming, fainting, or running away. Let's put ourselves in the dead person's place and realize what it means to them when we act in this selfish and cowardly manner. I like that, selfish and cowardly. If a person obviously in serious trouble came up to us on the physical plane and asked for help, we should surely be at least willing to listen to them. Why should we not extend the same courtesy to a person when they happen to be dead? Well, why not? Again, this idea of joyful, compassionate equanimity and service helps, because if we really want to be an invisible helper, if a ghost shows up, we want to be able to help them in some way. But Leadbeater is very clever in the way that he words this, because what he basically says is we're selfish and cowardly because we can't stop thinking only about ourselves. You know, if a ghost shows up, it is somebody in need, usually. And let me give you a story that from my own life that demonstrates what's exactly involved there. So I do some consulting work, and the kind of call that I really hate, quote unquote, or dislike or am uncomfortable with is find someone on the other side for me. I don't do it. When somebody contacts me about it, I say, okay, yeah, maybe if it happens, I'll let you know. I can't have no control over it. If it shows up, maybe, but wait for me to call, because you can't keep contacting me because I won't be able to help you with this unless whoever on the other side is in charge of my itinerary decides that it's worthwhile. So I got a call like that, and it was from the partner of one of my brother's closest friends. So it was not, and I'd never met her, but I had met this friend. We'd done a camping trip together long, long time ago. So I at least knew who he was. And he had passed on maybe not quite a year. And all she did was she just left a message on my answering service. And the message was basically, would you please call me? And I could tell from the voice, because I knew that her partner had passed on, what she wanted to ask of me. And, I went into panic mode like I usually do with that kind of question. And then I just, okay, whatever. If it happens, it happens. I didn't respond to her right away. And several weeks later, it was in the middle of the night. I was asleep. I was out of body. I was standing in front of my apartment building. And all of a sudden, almost like a meteor, there's this form that is not just running, but, almost like swimming with their arms like this from the sky down to the earth, lands right next to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, who are you? And I didn't immediately recognize this person, but it was actually the partner of the person I was talking about. And I have to say, I learned a lot from this person, because in this kind of state, thought is projected to you. And it's not like a conversation. It isn't like words. It's like if they have a message for you, it's more or less instantly projected to you. And then it can take quite a bit of time to sort it out later when you're awake. But you've got the thought form, so to speak. So it's just a matter of unpacking the thought form. So basically what this person said was, tell her about grieving. Tell her about grieving. He kept emphasizing that. So his partner was a spiritual teacher, and the two of them considered themselves soulmates. And she didn't understand why, after he passed, he didn't come back. But she so missed her soulmate that she set up one of those barriers I was talking about, where he couldn't get through. And it just happened that I was open because A, I knew him, and B, I was thinking about a neighbor who was about to pass away. And so I was kind of on the frequency, like, am I going to somehow help him in the afterlife? Because that's happened with a number of people that I know in my neighborhood. So what was I going to do? Well, he said, tell her about grieving. Tell her that she's got a spiritual mission. The beings on the other side that allowed me to come and see you wanted to do that because she's important to them. She's got this message that she needs to deliver, and she's got to get over her grief. And if she gets over her grief about why I haven't visited, she'll be able to perform the mission. But I can't get through without her getting rid of the grief. And then he said, it's really hard for me to get here. I had to exert all of my will to break out of this river. It's like the after-death state is like this big river, and it's almost like a river with a really strong current where once you get in it, no matter where you want to go, it'll just take you to the next stop. And you end up going there and doing what you need to do there. So I wanted to get out and talk to her, and I wasn't allowed to. But then the powers that be said that I could. But of course, I wouldn't be allowed to very long. And as I came into the Earth's orbit, I came in within range of her grieving and her desire for me. And if I allowed myself to have any of that desire, I would immediately be caught in that orbit, and I wouldn't be able to escape, and I wouldn't be able to continue in my afterlife progress if she continued to hold on to that. So, I mean, this was a vitally important message. And it's just like what Leadbeater was talking about. This happened in 2019, and I'd read the passage years and years ago, but I hadn't remembered it until I started thinking about wanting to, give an example of this in a sort of Halloween-based idea of how to use this idea of joyful, compassionate equanimity and service. So, I mean, it's a brave thing. I never met her. She didn't tell me what she wanted, but I knew. I wrote it all up and I sent it off to her. And then, of course, I sweated bullets for the next few days, because if she didn't get back to me, what would that mean? She didn't believe it. She didn't accept it. It was too strong. It was not her idea of who she was. There were all kinds of ways. But then she actually got back to me and thanked me very deeply. And she got back on Facebook, where she was doing some of her spiritual teaching work. And it seemed like her attitude had changed. And so I felt like I'd actually helped someone. But don't ask me to do it again. I hate that. Anyway, so there's my ghost story in honor of Halloween.